Senator Romney.
Thanks, Kelsey, and thanks to all of you for joining today. I begin by expressing my sympathy for what the industry's gone through and what many of our employers have gone through, as you've seen hotel occupancy and RevPAR completely collapse. April was a record disaster, and I know it's come back a bit. As I look at the numbers from Grand County, numbers from Springdale, I see that occupancy has improved from certainly where it was in April, but it's still not back to where it was in August of 2019. But despite the improvement, there are a lot of people that are still suffering, a lot of businesses in real trouble. And I know you all are doing your best, one, to keep your enterprise together, but those that have broader responsibility to try and do everything possible to encourage the reignition of our tourism economy and getting people back visiting and shopping and providing funding to keep our businesses going and keeping people employed. I thought I'd give you a brief update on what's happening with regards to the next relief package in Washington. I begin by saying I'm not 100% sure there's going to be another relief package from Washington. I think it's very likely, but not certain. A lot depends on the politics and whether people are putting pressure on their legislators, Republican and Democrat, to get something done. Because there are a number of people who say, hey, the last package of $2.2 trillion was enough. We don't need to do more. And the politics also suggest that there may be some that don't want to see anything done because they'd rather let things play out politically before action is taken. So with that said, let me just give you a brief update as where the negotiations are, even though not a lot happening today on the negotiating front. There's some places that the White House and Democratic leadership are pretty close to the same position. So for instance, additional funding for hospitals, pretty close to agreeing. More money for testing and vaccine production, yes, agreement there. Rental assistance, yes. A direct payment of $1,200 per adult who's earning under $75,000 or a household under $150,000. Just as before, those direct payments have also been agreed to by both parties. An extension of the PPP program to small businesses. That's something as well where Democrats and Republicans seem to be very close to the same position. It ought to be able to be worked out in about a day or so if we could get the overall deal put together. The new PPP program will be a little different than the last one. It will only be available for businesses with 300 employees and less. And an employer will need to show that they've seen at least a 30% reduction in revenue in order to qualify for the next round of PPP loans. All that good news is tempered by the fact that there's some bad news. The bad news is that the White House leadership and the Democrat leadership are far apart on several areas. One relates to how much money should go to states and localities to plug the revenue shortfall that exists in those areas. And the Republican position has been $150 billion should go to states and localities. The Democrat position is at least $1 trillion should go. And there doesn't seem to be much movement on the part of the Democrats from their figure. A similar story with regards to education. Republicans have proposed another $105 billion going to help schools with electronic technology, with separation provisions for students and so forth. The Democrats want $400 billion instead. Another area that is pretty far apart with regards to liability coverage. Republicans insist that employers, schools, hospitals not be sued for ordinary negligence because people happened to get COVID-19. And Democrats have not spoken about that, but understand that's the Republican position. And of course, the last issue is unemployment insurance. Republicans want to insist that people are not paid more for not working than they were getting paid while they were working. Democrats insist that everybody should get an additional $600 per week on top of the normal state unemployment figure. So for us, that's roughly $350 of state unemployment insurance payment per week. Another Democrats want $600 on top of that, so that's $950 a week. For a lot of people in the hospitality industry, that's substantially more than they were making working. Republicans say that doesn't make sense. We can't get the economy going again if people have an incentive not to go back to work. So those are the areas of the biggest gap. And I'm hopeful we'll get something done. but I just don't know whether the political pressure will build enough, particularly on the Democrats, and maybe even on us in the Republican circles, whether the pressure will build enough to actually provide this additional funding. So I hope it comes along. I know it will have a stimulative effect, but also it'll help people who are facing some tough times, the unemployed in particular, and of course this direct payment of $1,200 per person. That's stimulative. That's going to people whether they're working or not. And so that would encourage people to spend money, and assuming they're not going to be getting on airplanes and flying around the world, they're going to be spending money closer to home. And that's good news for tourism here, at least tourism that comes from people that live in the Intermountain West. So with that, Kelsey, I'll turn back to you for the next parts of the program. But again, thank you for all for participating in this. Again, my heart goes out to those that are really struggling to keep your enterprise together and keep people employed. We'll do our very best to get help to you, and make sure. I mean, I'm on your team, but if you feel you could productively make a call to your elected congressperson or either one of the senators, go ahead and do it. Put pressure on us. Get the calls in. We log all the calls you make, by the way. Everybody that makes a call, that gets logged. We then see a report every week of how many calls we got on each side of each issue. So make those calls. They make a difference.
Gotta mute myself. Thank you, Senator. And as a reminder, in the chat box, please put your questions. You can either do it to everyone, or you can pick one of the co-hosts specifically to ask your question. Pitt, will you give us an update, please?
Also need to unmute myself. Yes, thank you, Senator Romney and team, for putting this together and taking the time to discuss outdoor recreation and tourism. You know, what I want to talk about a little bit today and introduce you to a good friend of mine, and Lindsay Davis, to give us some more information on what's happening in the outdoor recreation market. The importance of outdoor rec has never been more prominent. As the economy shut down, the mountains and the deserts and the open lands and the spaces that we love, they became our safe space and kind of a place of refuge. So, you know, the trails are full of not only experienced enthusiasts now, but also a whole new group of first-time recreators. The goal of our office, the Office of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Utah, is to improve the quality of life for all Utah residents through outdoor recreation. So the rich recreational resources that Utah holds plays a very important role in the Utah economy. So it not only helps keep residents healthy and happy, but it also is a major driver for business development and tourism. So you know, just to give that a little bit of context, 50 of the fastest growing businesses in Utah attribute access to recreation and public lands as one of the top reasons for being located in Utah. You know, these businesses are very large economic drivers and bring great residents and revenue here into the state. Outdoor recreation is an integral part of the Utah culture, of our lifestyle and economy. And it's very important that we're having conversations about how to sustainably support outdoor recreation, how we plan for it, and how we fund it moving forward of our infrastructure and programs. So the Office of Outdoor Recreation will be hosting our 7th annual Outdoor Recreation Summit to discuss all of these topics at the end of this month. And Utah has been a leader in managing outdoor recreation infrastructure nationwide. A lot of states look to us as the way that how we've dealt with our outdoor recreation and the infrastructure in place and getting access to people visiting. So it's important that we're having these discussions, and I want to encourage everyone to participate in these conversations, to join us at the summit, to reach out to our office, whatever needs to be done to engage with how we can better facilitate outdoor recreation as it grows through this time of COVID and the recovery, and how it can help to spark and stimulate the economy as people continue to get outside more, people continue to visit our state to recreate, and the industry of the outdoor recreation industry as it continues to grow and sees the effects from all that's going on in the world today. So with that, I don't want to take any more time, but I'm excited to introduce Lindsay Davis. She's the Vice President of Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, and she'll be sharing some of the data around the trends that we've seen since COVID has started, and through COVID-19 and the usage, and then also important steps that we can take as a state and as a country as outdoor recreation continues to grow and continues to be such a great resource for economic improvement nationwide, and especially here in Utah moving forward. So thanks for being with us, Lindsay. Will you please take it away?
Yeah, thank you, Pitt. Good morning, and thank you for your time today, Senator Romney. As Pitt said, I'm here on behalf of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. We're a 32-member association, or roundtable of associations that represent 110,000 businesses in the full spectrum of activities and recreation, from skiing to hunting, climbing, fishing, diving, off-roading, boating, RVing, and more. We have unified outdoor businesses around a shared goal of maximizing opportunities for recreation for every American by improving infrastructure and access. We focus on fostering collaboration between industries and agencies, removing barriers to access in the outdoors, conserving our core infrastructure in public lands and waters, and ensuring recognition of recreation's contributions to national and state economies. We're a major force in the American economy. We represent $778 billion in economic output, 2.2% of US GDP, and provide 5.2 million American jobs. Pre-pandemic, we were growing faster than the economy as a whole in every indicator, and surpassing other key sectors such as petroleum, coal, and computer and electronic products. We've been severely impacted, like most, by COVID-19. With months of closures, entire supply chains have been disrupted. Meanwhile, local, state, and federal public lands that serve as the backbone of our industry and allow people to experience the outdoors were closed. While the overall impact of the outdoor recreation economy is large in scale, the sector is comprised of thousands of small businesses vital to the health and economic well-being of their communities, many of which are in rural areas. These businesses have gone through unprecedented downturns, and many are still in danger of permanent closure. According to ORR's May member survey, 88% of businesses surveyed laid off or furloughed employees. 94% saw a decrease in revenue, and astonishingly, all 23,000 businesses surveyed were experiencing difficulty with production and distribution, 79% of which were experiencing significant impacts. According to the US Census Bureau, 75% of small businesses in the category that includes recreation are reporting large negative effects. Overall, our category has been hit 31% harder than the national average, making our industry the second most affected sector in the country, behind food and accommodation. As many outdoor businesses were deemed non-essential and forced to temporarily close, small shop owners watched large retailers like Amazon, Target, and Walmart gain market share on tents, bikes, camping equipment, and more. Despite these hardships, outdoor recreation companies across the country stepped up to aid first responders with RVs as mobile medical clinics, campgrounds as temporary accommodations, and gear and ski manufacturers converted their production lines to produce PPE. While businesses have been reeling from economic shock, Americans' lives and communities have also changed this year. With many of our services closed, Americans are turning to the outdoors to provide a necessary reprieve. In past years, less than 50% of Americans enjoyed an outdoor experience. However, now, a May survey found that 81% of Americans said they had spent time outside during the pandemic, with 32% turning to the outdoors for the first time and planning to keep the habit post-pandemic. Camping is viewed by all consumers as the safest way to travel now, and the U.S. Forest Service is reporting record growth. On days when they would already be experiencing high volume of traffic, visitation is nearly 3 times what it was in 2015. And metro areas across the country are seeing park visitation increases ranging from 6 to 145%. Recent sales data reflects this growth. Fishing license sales are surging, with some states seeing over 100,000 new licenses, and nationwide there's almost a 7% growth in resident sales. Leisure bike sales rose 120% over 2019 levels in March. RV dealers, for whom 98% of their products sold in the US are produced domestically, set sales records in May and June. They're also watching their demographic shift to younger and first-time buyers. Boat sales are also on the rise, with an increase of 59% from April to May. 95% of these boats are made in the US. These new trends are painting a clearer picture of what Americans value during a pandemic. People want to be outside enjoying the outdoors with their families. While we're seeing substantially more people heading outside, the constraints of the pandemic have also shed light on access issues, as not all communities could access the outdoors at a time when they needed it the most. As governors restricted travel and encouraged residents to use their local communities for walks and exercise, the realization that more than 100 million people are not within 10 minutes walk of a park or green space became even more apparent. Parks serving a majority of people of color average half the size and serve 5 times as many people per acre as those serving white communities. We appreciate Congress's swift action for seasonal businesses with the CARES Act and PPP. Because the outdoor industry is primarily small businesses, this relief was critical. We are hoping for additional measures to be taken to allow businesses to reapply for funding they are now eligible for with the seasonal adjustments, as some who applied early were not able to reap these benefits. Additionally, recent investments in our core infrastructure in public lands and waters with the passing of the Great American Outdoors Act will prove to be very impactful, as adequate infrastructure is the backbone of our industry. The recreation community is making sure this is administered in a way that helps rural communities and prioritizes projects that grow the recreation economy, so we get the most ROI from this allocation and are able to bring back jobs. Though we've been devastated this year, we are a resilient sector on the comeback. In the next few years, we need to focus on keeping businesses alive to support this new user demand so we can get back to being the economic driver that we once were. We're focusing on rural economic development, working with the EDA and the USDA's new Rural Development Toolkit, and creating an ORR user guide that coincides with this and helps communities rebuild their main streets around sustainable outdoor recreation. There's never been a better time to consider a recreation package made up of critical management policies like recreation, not red tape, the SOAR Act, the ski area fee retention, and recreational trails program. Alongside conservation corps and workforce expansion can ensure the federal government is investing in places and tools that can revitalize our economy. New funding with GAOA can coincide with these bills calling for better management tools for agencies. Additionally, these bills encourage all states to have a rec director like Utah. These offices are key at both state and federal levels, and we need to make sure there's a person in every state to coordinate with the federal government. All efforts should be taken to support this key industry that can help communities recover, create American jobs, and continue to ensure Americans' connection with the outdoors and the natural world. Thank you for holding this town hall this morning, and please consider ORR a partner in supporting the recreation economy and outdoor users here in Utah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. Vicki, talk about tourism for real quick, please.
Unmute. Senator Romney, thank you so much for taking time with us. You can see 400 plus people tuned in today. We are a very engaged industry. We are deeply grateful for the leadership that you are showing on COVID and so many other fronts. You make us proud as Utahns. I want to highlight a handful of things and then turn the time to somebody who's on the front lines and can tell you the straight scoop. But obviously this is a huge industry, the most impacted industry in the state. $10 billion of spending in Utah tourism in a normal year. We will be very lucky this year if we hit about half of that. On an average day, a Utah tourist would spend about $26 million a day, and we're at about half of that right now. 9 times worse impact than 911, according to industry analysts. Now, that with all that hard news, there are so many things that we're optimistic about. We are on a path to recovery. We're seeing some improvement, particularly in our gateway communities to our national parks. We are really proud of the way our governor and our state have made use of the CARES funds that you have sent our way. They have been invested in COVID-related tourism marketing that will help visitors prepare for a safe visit to the state. They've also been invested in relief programs for small businesses and many of those businesses are on the call today. Customers are also benefiting from those relief programs. It's called Shop in Utah, as I'm sure you're aware, because the half of the benefit is being passed on to customers in the form of discounts. So Utah stands out in the nation in the way we've handled our CARES funding. We're one of only 2 states that has made these wise investments in rebuilding the tourism economy. We've become something of a national model, and the credit goes to our governor and legislature for using the money that you have allocated wisely. Greatly appreciated. I want to give you one headline about the area that is the most deeply impacted throughout our entire industry. I know you've been in communications about this. The convention districts, think of downtown Ogden, downtown Salt Lake, hundreds of millions of dollars of lost revenues because people are not going to conventions. It would be so useful if we could secure funding for these destination marketing organizations through the PPP by allowing 501c6s to participate in that program. I know we have lots of folks in the town hall, and I don't want to stand in the way of their many comments and questions. I'm going to turn the time to Lance Syrett. Lance is the general manager of Ruby's Inn. Anybody who hasn't been to Ruby's Inn needs to have that amazing experience just outside Bryce Canyon National Park. Also the chair of the Board of Tourism Development. Lance?
Thanks, Vicki. Well, Senator, it's a pleasure to be with you here today. I know they just had the congressional field trip. I don't know if you were down here. I think Kelsey came down, but we had a lot of you folks down here checking things out last couple of days, and we appreciate that. So in regards to tourism, I mean, I tend to be a positive person, but it's been pretty bad. You know, we just went over financials in a manager report, and we're down 48.5%. And in an industry where you know, margins tend to be pretty thin, you know, we have the hotels, but we also have the restaurants, and you know, 10 or 15% is a good margin if you're in the restaurant business. And when you're down 48.5%, I don't even know how to relate to that. Again, I think I'm still a little bit in denial. But you know, one of the things that concerns me, I appreciate what you've said about the unemployment insurance. I can tell you that during COVID, our people have been amply taken care of. We're able to bring everybody back to work that was on unemployment, but you know, the help that they received during that time period, I think you spoke well that some of those people made more money than they've ever made in their lives, and you know, we can debate that all day, but it was definitely hard to get some of them back to work. So I appreciate your point on that, and any new you know, CARES Act should make them whole, not make them extra. So, but anyway, you know, the tourism business, especially you know, in the summer, we only have about 5 months of positive cash flow. And of course, you know, I have peers in other industries, and they say, well, why do you do it then? Well, it's kind of like farming. You know, farming, you got to get enough hay in the barn during the summer to get through the winter. And we've got a lot of people that have year-round benefits. You know, we've got some great staff. We're a 140-year-old family business, so we got to take care of people. But you know, that's one of the things I know that you involved in the hotel industry and understand supply and demand and RevPAR and rates, and how when things are good, you know, supply and demand pushes those rates high. And, you know, last, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, things have been good for the industry, and we've been able to push those rates high. And in some destinations, they've been extremely high. But that same effect, that same supply and demand curve, when it goes the other way, it's a vicious cycle. You know, we're, you know, 40% occupancy, but our rate is about 33% of what it was last year. So those functions, they, you know, it's hard to wrap your brain around how, when the supply and demand curve goes the other way, how quickly that can damage your business. One thing, and you know, we've got Commissioner Tebbs down here he carries the flag for us. We talked to Mike Lee's people a couple weeks ago about this, and one thing to keep in mind for the next COVID stimulus is we'd like something that specifically, you know, again, I was I think it was in Salt Lake City last week, and you know, it was hard to get into some of the fast food places. They were so busy, and you know, a lot of people, they kind of see that, that's what they see, and they think, well, the restaurant industry is doing great. You know, hotels, you know, some places are 100% occupancy on the weekends, but something specifically to tourism-based businesses who are going to go off a cliff in October and November. Again, all these priorities to take care of our staff. I sure appreciate that, because a lot of these people are lifelong. You know, they're basically family members. Here at Ruby's, we're a family business, and we like to treat people like family, and we appreciate what's been done to take care of those folks. But, you know, there's this, you know, a corporation is basically legally a person, and who's going to hire those people back in the spring, even when the government, you know, takes care of them all winter for their unemployment insurance, things like that. Got to protect the corporations. And I know that, you know, some people on the other side of the aisle sometimes complain about corporate welfare and stuff, but we've got to be there. We still got expenses through the winter time. You still got your liability insurance, mortgage payments, utilities. I mean, you've ran a business, you know what I'm talking about. So, but that's something we'd like, you know, as things down the road. You know, I can speak for the whole industry. As far as the summer industry, there's going to be a major cliff, and you know, the restaurants, guides and outfitters, hotels, these destination type places. Again, business is okay right now. We're putting money in the bank. That being said, we're not putting near enough in there that we're going to be able to make it through the winter. So I challenge you just with you know, things coming up, to keep that a priority, and we're going to need some help. And I'd like your ideas on the PPP, and I can guarantee that Ruby's in, you know, we're a big company, but we're family owned, and I guarantee our revenues are down more than 30%. So we would fall into that those criteria. So with that being said, that's my report.
Thank you.
Dang mute button. We just want to acknowledge that we've got Valhel also, who's joined in, so we appreciate him joining us, and all of you as well. So now we'll get into the questions. The first one, Senator, comes from Tom Lund. He's asked, has there been any discussion on extending the SBA loan payments that was approved and funded in the CARES Act?
There has been discussion about that, and I believe there will be an effort to adjust the first round of the PPP program. I think for most individuals who took a PPP loan, they're going to find that they're going to get that loan forgiven, and there will not be a repayment required. Some took an EIDL loan. It's an EIDL, an EIDL loan. Those loan payments were stretched, I believe, a couple of years with a holiday in paying back on those loans. So, but if there are adjustments, further adjustments that you think need to be considered, pass them along to our office. Let us be aware, and we can push on the SBA as well as through our colleagues to see if we can't make adjustments there. But there's going to be every effort to try and make it easier for small businesses, just as Lance indicated, to be able to make it through this tough time. And because what we don't want to have happen is have a host of small businesses go out of business, because if they do, then there's no job for people to go back to. And so we're doing our best in Washington to get funding out to small businesses so they can keep the lights on, keep the doors open, and keep paying their mortgages and so forth. So the business is there, so that people have a job to go back to. And that's why there'll be, I believe, a new round of PPP loans, and why forgiveness will be relatively straightforward for those businesses that have already received a PPP loan. And for those that have an EIDL loan, the terms of that, the interest rate has been modified, and the term for repayment, I believe, was modified. But if I'm wrong on that, let us know, and we'll go to work on it. Thank you.
Thanks. Next question is from Bianca Lyon. What role do you predict the tourism/outdoor recreation industry will have in the state's economic recovery?
Well, you know, there are probably others that could answer that question better than I. Perhaps we'll turn to Vicki for her comment on that. I do want to say, by the way, before I let Lance get off the hook is that actually I was at Ruby's Inn Monday night, spent a nice evening there in a Lakeview room, and enjoyed my stay. But so by $99, I'm sure that's going to bridge the gap for you guys. The rate was a lot less than I expected, but clearly a big part of the most variable part of our state's economy relates to tourism and travel and recreation. And it's the area that got hit the hardest. It's where we've had most of the job losses in the state. And so as we look at the recovery of the state, that's the place that we're hoping to see the most aggressive rebound. We haven't had that yet. It's coming back somewhat, but people are still frightened, particularly of air travel. And so it just hasn't happened the way we would have liked. I do believe we're going to see conventions take a long time to come back again. And that's just a personal perspective, but business people I speak with are not so sure they're going to have as many trade shows, as many conventions, as many company meetings as they've had in the past. And part of it is that they've gotten used to working on a remote basis. They've gotten used to not having as many meetings. And so I think that portion of our travel and tourism economy surrounding our convention centers is probably going to take longer to recover than perhaps the gateway cities and some of the outdoor ski facilities and so forth. One of the big questions, of course, is can people plan on the ski facilities being open this winter? They need to know that soon so they can make travel plans consistent with recreation opportunities. But let's turn to you, Vicki. Any comment that you have on that question?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Senator. Two quick things I would add is that I'm inspired by the vision that Visit Salt Lake has around the future of the convention business. This has changed our worlds. We have a mentality that we should never let a crisis go to waste. And the way they're approaching this one is to be leaders in a hybrid convention format that will enable people to gather in smaller places around the community, and then also have that high impact technology experience of being together. So I think that's very promising. But again, as you say, Senator, it's a long-term play. One other component that we're enthusiastic about is that because our state has been willing to invest in our recovery, we are working really hard to increase our market share with our international visitors by keeping them engaged and inspired around planning a Utah vacation once they're ready to get on a plane.
Excellent. I would note, just as a side point, Vicki, and for others, as the federal government looks at the managing the number of visitors that come to our national parks, we really want to make it very clear we don't want to go to a lottery system. When we get back to full travel, going to a lottery system, I'm afraid would say to somebody coming internationally, gee, I got into, let's say, Bryce, but I didn't get into Zion's. They're going to be less interested in coming to Utah if they don't know whether they can get into all of the parks they want to see while they're here. So we've got to make sure that we don't have the federal government really mess up international travel opportunities for our state.
Yeah, thank you for caring so much about getting it right with national parks, because there's so much potential for improvement.
Okay, our next question comes from Mary Godwin. She said, my organization has less than 100 full-time staff, but hires over 1,100 seasonal staff during the summer. With the new PPP limit of 300 staff, will seasonal staff count in this number?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a darn good question. I would apply with your full-time staff and make the application and see what comes back. And I don't know whether it's going to be accepted or rejected. I wish I had better news for you on that front. But I will. I'll certainly look into it. But Kelsey, why don't you or Adam, who's our office head here in Salt Lake, take a look at that particular issue and see how that counts for the PPP loan.
Will do. We'll connect with Mary on that one. Next question. We've had quite a few folks ask about your vote in regard to the Great American Outdoors Act. would you address that?
Yeah, as often happens in Washington, in order to get a bill passed, something that is very good is attached to something that's not so good. And that way you can get some people who like the not so good thing to vote for something that's good. And that's what happened with this act, which is a provision of the act provides funding for maintenance of our national parks and goes after the backlog of maintenance projects that haven't been done. That's something I strongly support and wanted to see passed independently. But they connected it with a provision which says that the federal government is going to have $1 billion approximately per year to buy new land from private individuals or perhaps even from states, but to buy new land to make it federal land. And I don't want to see the federal government buy more land in Utah. We already have enough federal land in Utah, but I do know that they're not going to find land that they can buy in Vermont or Massachusetts or Virginia, because the places they're going to be focused are where they have a lot of land already, and that's going to be in places like Utah, and they got enough here. And so Senator Lee and I worked together on amendments to say, look, you can only buy land in a state if the state legislature agrees. That amendment was not picked up and did not pass. We also said before the federal government can buy new federal land in a state, they've got to dispose of other federal land in that state. Again, that didn't pass. So I was one of those, like Senator Lee, that said the federal government's buying too much land. We don't want to spend $1 billion a year buying more federal land. I'd also note that this provision was not paid for. It was just more red ink on the federal deficit, and that's something I just couldn't sign up for. So I'm glad that we'll have additional funding for our national parks. I'm going to fight very hard to make sure they don't keep on buying more land in Utah. The federal government should have less of our land. We should have more control of our land, and less federal interference with the land we do have.
Thanks. And I will say too, we'll have our staff, like I said, Clay and Scott, particularly, probably Matt, put their emails in the chat box. So as we get towards the end of our town hall, if you have any further questions or ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to our staff. Just one or two more questions, Senator. One is, do you see any potential flexibility when it comes to the ability to use PPP loans on things other than payroll specifically?
Yes, I recall, I think it was the percentage that had to go to payroll was 75% before. I think it's being reduced now to 60%, 60% for payroll, 40% for other things. And the other things include mortgage payments, utility payments, and the like, bank payments. So there's a great deal of flexibility, and 40% of the PPP money is able to be used for things other than employee compensation. So more flexibility there, and therefore hopefully greater support in keeping business doors open, so that again we have places for people to go to work when this COVID crisis is finally beyond us.
So another question is kind of regarding schools, and I don't know if you kind of want to give your thoughts when it comes to schools opening or reopening. One specifically is, if schools end up closing as a result of COVID, do you expect there to be any grants or any help when it comes to childcare?
I think that's going to be on a state-by-state basis, which is the funding that will come to states, whether that's the $150 billion that the Republicans have proposed or the $400 billion the Democrats have asked for. There's going to be additional money that goes to states to deal with education, and each state will decide how that money is going to be used. And whether that's going to be used for childcare or not, I don't know. I think there's probably going to be much more emphasis on helping schools get the technology they need to be able to have remote learning as well as in-person learning, to get additional floor space so that students are able to socially distance. So I think that's probably where the funding will be directed. I also would note that the $1,200 per person payment is designed really to recognize that a lot of folks have additional costs associated with their kids, and that's childcare. I proposed instead of $1,200 per adult and $500 per child, I proposed we had $900 for each child and for each adult, basically putting more money towards the kids, because the kids are the source of additional cost that that individuals are facing as a result of this crisis, and that money is really designed to help people with childcare. So I think the focus of the childcare dollars is going to come through the direct payments of $1,200 per person and the $500 per child.
Awesome. And that unfortunately is our time. But like I said, if we didn't get to your questions, please, Scott and Clay, just put their information in the chat box. Let us know, and we will send a follow-up email as well. So, Senator, I'll turn it over to you for some last remarks.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we all recognize, myself and Kelsey and Clay and Matt and Scott, I mean, our whole team recognizes that our job is to try and help the people of Utah. And to know how to do that, we need to hear from you. So if you see things that are really problems, and it's not just a narrow issue, but it's something that affects a number of people in your industry or in your community, let us know and suggest things we might do to make a difference. And we'll try and fight to get something done on that front. It takes a long time. You require patience because Congress moves in a very, very slow way, much slower than states move, which is sometimes very frustrating. We've been working, for instance, with the Navajo Nation to provide running water to the citizens in our state on the Navajo Nation. And this is something we've been working on. It began under Senator Hatch, and it's been a priority of mine over the last year and a half. We finally got a provision passed by the Senate. I had to get every single senator, Republican and Democrat, to come on board. And we finally had that happen. Now it's in the House. And we're trying to get it passed in the House so we can finally get it to the president's desk. It takes a long time for this to happen. But nonetheless, matters that need to be addressed and that can be addressed to help our people and help our enterprises of all kinds, let us know what they are. And if we can get enough support, we'll go to work and try and make a difference. So thanks to you. Our job is to help you. We're doing our best. This town hall was a vehicle just to communicate with you and basically to stimulate your thinking as to what things you can tell us to do better. And we'll do our best to get them done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.